Welcome to Sakshi TV Special Immigration Talk Show with attorney Ms. Prashanthi Reddy. Please note that Sakshi TV now has 4 immigration shows every week, on Tuesdays with lawyer Srinivas Kaveti, or Wednesdays with Prashanthi Reddy in English, on Thursdays with Chand Parvatneni, and on Fridays with Banu Nidra. Please tune in to ask your questions. If you are an immigration attorney and would like to join our special shows, please email us at usa@sakshi.com or call us at 8667257441. Before we begin the show, please note that the information provided on this show is not a legal advice and for general informational purposes only. Sakshi TV or its agents will not be responsible for the use of information. If you need any specific legal advice, you can definitely contact the attorney directly. Ms. Prashanthi Reddy needs no introduction, but if you need consultation, you can definitely log on to our website, which is www.reddyesq.com. They have a wealth of free information and online tools for the hands of immigration community who do not have to be a lawyer to understand. They made sure that they have explained all specific laws very easily for the immigrant community out there. Before you tune into them, don't forget to mention Sakshi TV. Without any further delay, let's welcome Prashanthi Reddy on our show. Prashanthi Reddy Garu, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, Shivani. How are you?
I'm doing great, Reddy Garu. Thank you so much for asking. Before we get on to the topic, our topic today is pretty general, but also very important. But before we get on to that topic, do we have any special immigration updates that we have to know?
Let's start directly with the topic.
Yes. So today we decided on how, so the name of the topic was, how do you get your parents to USA? So this was our basic topic. So what are some of the main headline topics that we are going to be covering today, Reddy Garu?
So basically, I thought we should discuss, because of COVID and lots of things that are happening, people here are worried, in the US are worried about their family members, especially their aging parents. And often I get questions from them asking, basically stating that, our parents are there, they're old, they don't have anyone to look after them. So how do we bring them to the US? What immigration status can we bring them on? So I thought I would discuss today how to bring the parents, basically how to file a green card for them if they qualify, or if not, how to at least bring them on a visitor's visa. So we will be covering both green card as well as non-immigrant method today.
Yes. So let's go ahead and talk about a green card, because there are a lot of Indians already in USA with green cards or on their H-1Bs. But first, let's get on to the green cards, because I think that is something that is what most the people who are there in USA have their priority as, because now that they're actually the citizens of USA and there's nobody else taking care of their parents in India, they think it's their priority to get it. So first, let's get on to that. What is the process like, and what are some important points that the viewers must keep in their heads before they start this process?
So it's important to know that you can bring, if you're a US citizen, you can bring your parents here as immediate relatives. So under immigration law, the immigration law allows certain foreign nationals who are family members of US citizens or lawful permanent residents to become lawful permanent residents themselves, that is, obtain a green card. So there are 2 types of family-based cases. One is immediate relatives and one is preference relatives. Now, luckily for us, immediate relatives, parents are immediate relatives. And the reason why we're lucky is if you're an immediate relative, if you come under the immediate relative category, then your visa numbers never run out. They're always current. You don't have to wait for a visa number to become available. Unlike that of preference categories where they have to wait for their visa numbers to become available. So the process is much longer. Some examples of immediate relatives is, of course, as I just said, parents of US citizens, spouses of US citizens, unmarried children, that is, children under the age of 21. Of US citizens. So spouses, parents, and children. These are the three categories that come under immediate relatives. So today we will talk about, of course, we're going to be talking about parents and how to bring parents in and what the process is to bring them in. For preference relatives, basically that's a different category, and usually under that preference relatives come the unmarried children 21 years of age or older of US citizens. So if your child is over 21, then you'd fall under preference category, then you'll have to wait for the visa number to become available, and you go to the visa bulletin every month to check if that your preference category, which is F1, is available or not. Second preference category is spouses and children of green card holders or lawful permanent residents. Third preference category, the second F2B category is unmarried sons and daughters of lawful permanent residents. Third preference is married sons and daughters of US citizens. So if you're a US citizen and your children are married, then you come under the third preference. Again, visa number has to be available. The fourth preference is brothers and sisters. So if you're a US citizen, you want to bring your brothers or sister, your siblings into the US, then again, you'll have to use fourth preference category, and there is an availability for that also. And every month, as I said, a visa bulletin is published under which all these preference categories are mentioned. There's a table, you can go and look at it. So, but we're just sticking to one category right now, which is the immediate relative category. And within that category, we're sticking to the parents of US citizens, how to bring them here. So the first step to bring your parent here on a green card is, of course, you have to be a US citizen. And then you have to file an I-130 petition for them. An I-130 petition is an immediate relative petition. Now, the process changes after that a little bit. If you're in the country, it's a different process. If you're outside the country, that is, if your relative is outside the country, it's a different process. So let's first talk about your relative, your mother or father being in the country. So if the relative is in the country, you file an I-130 petition, which is, as I said, an immigrant visa petition, wherein you show proof of relationship. You have to fill out the I-130 form. You have to submit documentation to show, address and other biometrics information such as age, etc. Along with that, you basically, if they're in the country, you have to show that they're in status. So you have to show proof of status as well if you're on the I-130, if you have to file an I-130. Also, something to remember is relationship documents, as I said, are very important, which means that if they are your parents, then you have to show your birth certificate in which the parents that you're seeking to petition for, their names have to be mentioned as parents in that. That's a key document for the I-130, the parents document, or proof of relationship document. You also have to submit birth certificates, your birth certificate and your parents' birth certificate as well. And if the parents' birth certificate is not available, then you have to submit something called a non-availability certificate from the registrar of births and deaths. It usually is the municipality where your parent was born. And you have to submit secondary evidence, which is, say, birth affidavits from maybe their older siblings, your parents' older siblings, or their friends who are older. Anyone who is present at the time of their birth who can attest to the fact that they were born on so-and-so day at so-and-so place. So that's important for the I-130. Now, if you're in the country, as we were discussing, you can file the 485 along with the I-130. So you file simultaneously the I-130 and the 485 application. While the I-130 is the immigrant petition application, where you're filing for an immigrant petition for your relative, and that's usually signed by the sponsor or by the US citizen. You also have to file an adjustment of status application, which is the 485 application, to adjust your status to that of a green card holder. And this document is usually signed by the alien relative or signed by your parent. So very important, these two documents have to be submitted. And the 485 documents also, you have to submit proof of status, proof of relationship, etc. In addition to that, file 485, you have to also show that the alien or the parent will not become a public charge once they come into the country. once they get their green card. That basically means that they should not have the potential. The USCIS officers should not think that they will potentially start taking government aid once they, become a green card holder. So there's more to this public charge law, and it's important to understand it. So the Congress established this public charge law, and they basically said that the person would be inadmissible or will not get the 485 if it's likely that at any time the person will become a public charge. So it's based on many factors as to how they decide whether the person will become a public charge or not. So they want to make sure that this person, as I said, does not take any kind of public assistance, public cash assistance, income maintenance assistance, or go through any long-term institutionalization. And if they have gone through and if they've used any of this in the past, then they will automatically be considered to be a public charge. So it's very important that we look into their details and make sure that they have not taken any public assistance, the particular types of public assistance in the past. Now, there's some public assistance that doesn't come under the public charge and some does. So we will discuss that further. But just very quickly, not everyone has to show that they will not become a public charge. There are some people that are exempt from the public charge grounds of inadmissibility. These people, just to name a few, are people who are applying for refugee status, asylum status, people from Cuba and Haiti, people from juveniles, special immigrant juveniles, people who are applying under TPS, certain relatives of military, people who have, deceased military people and their immediate relatives. There are some people like this who don't have to show that they are admissible under the public charge law. So who is considered, what are the factors that USCIS will consider when making a public charge determination? What factors? They are supposed to look at an overall, the overall picture and not look at only one or two factors. But in general, they will look at factors such as the age of the applicant, the age of the alien, that person's health. If they're sick, then they might, take public assistance, which is not allowed, a form of public assistance that's not allowed. So maybe then they may not approve the green card. They look at family status, they look at assets, they look at resources, financial status, they look at the education and skills of the applicant that's filing the 485, that's the alien. So to see whether they have enough education to work. So it's all these factors. So if any one factor is not conducive, that doesn't mean that the green card will get denied. But more importantly, USCIS will give a favorable decision if there is an affidavit of support. So in all 485s, the sponsor, that's the child, will anyway give the affidavit of support. Of course, the child has to be over 21 years of age to give that affidavit of support. And if the child is not over 21 years of age, then they cannot file for the green card for their parents. So that's important. US citizen and over 21 years of age is an important factor to keep in mind in order to file. Now, it's also important to look at, as I said, which public benefit does not is not considered to be a public charge ground. So not every, as I said, not every public charge is considered bad, but some are. So what is not considered bad is if you take some kind of a nutrition program. So you, under the Supplement Nutritional Assistance Program called SNAP, or if you take a special supplement nutritional program for women and infants and children, or if you get some kind of benefit under a health program, such as Children's Health Insurance Program, if you take Medicaid, health insurance under the Affordable Care Act, that's not considered to be a public charge. Also, any benefits related to COVID testing or any kind of communicable disease testing or vaccination, even if it's free, it's not considered to be violation of public charge. Housing programs, if you take housing benefits because you're poor and you can't afford housing, that also would be considered not to be looked at as a public charge. Also, education and childcare programs are not public charges. Attending a public school, taking loans, etc., etc., are not considered to be public charge. Anything under, if you get any benefit under the disaster relief benefit program, for example, there's a flood, there's an earthquake, you get some kind of a benefit, there's a fire, you lose your home, and you get benefit by FEMA. FEMA sends you a benefit package. That would not be considered to be, you would not be considered to be a public charge simply because you got that benefit. So what is a public charge then? What will be considered to be a public charge? So if you take SSI, Supplemental Security Income, if you're taking money from the government because you're not able to afford, food and housing, etc. If you take, again, cash assistance under TANF, that's a different program. Temporary assistance for needy families. If you take under that program, that will be considered public assistance. Also, if you take state and local cash assistance programs that provide benefits for income maintenance. If you are institutionalized for a long period of time under government expense, such as joining a nursing home or a mental health institution, that is considered to be a public charge. So it's important to know. And so before your relative applies, of course, they look at all the factors that I mentioned, and also whether you've ever been a public charge in the past, and also whether if there's an affidavit of support, that will be considered to be favorable. They'll look at it favorably. So that is about public charge. So as long as you are not considered to be a public charge, your 485 will get approved. In addition to that, in order for your 485 to get approved, you should be inspected or admitted to the US. So your parent cannot cross the border illegally. They have to be enter with inspection. They must be, at the time of filing, if you want to file a 485, they must be present in the US. They must be eligible to receive such status, right? And also they must be admissible. So they shouldn't have committed a crime or done something that will make them inadmissible in addition to the public charge thing. There are other things, other events that can make them inadmissible. So none of those, none of those should be, none of those factors should be applicable to that particular relative, to your parent. In addition to filing adjustment of status, I said that there are two ways of filing for your relative. If they're physically present in the US, you file an I-130 and you file a 485. But if they're not in the US, then what would you do? Then you would file an I-130, wait for it to get, you would file an I-130 counselor processing, wait for it to get approved. And once that gets approved, then the I-130 is sent to the National Visa Center. And if the priority date is available, which it will be if you're filing for an immediate relative and you're a US citizen, then you will, if it's available, then they will send that I-130 to NVC, or the National Visa Center. So once they send it to the NVC or the National Visa Center, what happens is you will get an email from the National Visa Center. And once you get an email from National Visa Center, they will ask you to fill out some forms, and they will also online, all this happens online. And then they will also ask for some supporting documents, like the supporting documents I mentioned for a 485. That is the similar kind of documents they ask at NVC. So they ask for the affidavit of support, they ask for marriage, birth certificates, they ask for proof of relationship. They also ask you to pay a fee, so you have to pay that fee as well, and all this is done online. Once NVC is satisfied that you have met all the requirements and you have submitted all the documents, then what happens is they send the file to the consulate. And if you're from India, then the consulate would be in Mumbai. You will then be called for an interview. At the interview, you will submit all the original documents, and if you have not submitted the fee already, you will pay the fee. And they will, if they're able to verify everything, and if there are no issues, they will grant you the immigrant visa. Now they will grant you something called the visa packet. That visa packet is usually sealed. So you have to make sure that it remains sealed, you don't open it, and take that. Once that is done at the consulate, then you are supposed to go travel to the US. And then at the port of entry, when you seek admission at the port of entry at the airport, you will present that visa packet, or your alien relative will present the visa packet to the CBP at the border, and they will then process the application, and they will allow you to enter into the US, and they will mail the green card home to your home. The green card doesn't come immediately, you'll receive it by mail because they have to process it. So this is how a US citizen can bring their parents into the US. Now there's no way that anybody else can bring their parents. A permanent resident cannot bring their parents into the US on a green card at least. But anyone can bring their parents into the US on a visitor's visa. So shall we go now to the visitor's visa and see how?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I was going to ask you, Miss Reddy. And also, when you were kind of explaining, some rules, there were, there are apparently, I want people to understand that, in USA, every state has different laws. So whatever laws that you have explained, so is it similar and same to all the states, or are there any differences, that people must notice?
So they're all the same because this is federal law. Immigration law is federal law. So while you're right, with certain kinds of law, it's different in every state, but immigration law is same in all states. So the issue with public charge especially is will be the same. So all these benefits that I spoke about are all federal benefits. So really it'll be the same in all states, and the immigration law on the whole is same in all states.
Yes. Okay, then can we get along with the visitor's visa, and how can they bring their parents on a visitor visa?
Sure. So everybody, obviously, we know that everybody is not a US citizen. We have people who are permanent residents, and they can wait until they become citizens and then bring their parents here. But you also have people on a H1, people on a H4, and they might want their parents to come at least for a visit, if not be able to come permanently. But you can bring them in for a visit, and they can stay for 6 months, a maximum of 6 months. We have over 20 million non-immigrants admitted every year. And out of that 20 million, 3/4 of them are visitors who come as tourists to the US. So the appropriate visa to bring your parents would be on a B2 visa. And while this process is simple, it can also be very difficult depending on the consulate and depend on what questions they ask. So generally, as I said, a person on a B2 can come in on an I-94 for 6 months, and then they can apply for an extension for another 6 months. So a total, they can stay in the US for a period of 1 year if you come on a visitor's visa. Though I don't recommend staying for long periods of time on a visitor's visa, because you're supposed to use it to visit. And when you use it, if it seems like you're staying in this country rather than visiting, then they may not allow you back into the country the next time when you visit, or they'll give you a hard time, or they might ask you why you're coming so often. For example, recently a client of mine said that their mother was questioned, and then they actually called my client and spoke to the client as well, because the mother was, couldn't speak English properly. There was a problem with communication, and they asked all kinds of questions, and they said, why did she stay in the US last year for a whole year? Why did she stay the year before for an entire year? So while he was able to explain during COVID period why she stayed. The following year, 2022, he was not able to explain why she stayed for such a long period of time. But they were good enough to give her I-94, or they allowed her to come into the country at least. But they gave her only for a period of 1 month. And they said that if she stays for more than a month, then they'll cancel her visa. So it's important to keep in mind that a visitor's visa is exactly for that. It's to visit, and it's not to stay in the US. And if you do, then your parents will be unnecessarily harassed at the port of entry, and they might be sent back or forced to withdraw their application to enter the US.
Yes. And
So
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Miss Reddy, this is like a very common thing. What happens is usually the mothers or their parents, like generally parents, especially mothers, they want to visit their daughter who are like pregnant, or that's like the most common reason why usually parents do travel if their daughter or son are expecting a baby. So what happened last year was there was an issue where they had a 6 months of visitor visa, but then her daughter was due like a month later and they had to stay an extra 1 month. So, and then there were a lot of issues that arise, and a lot of people go through these kind of issues. So to avoid that, are there any precautions?